Okay. Well, welcome to anybody who's watching today. Another episode of Cubed Podcast where we try and bring you a range of business folk and hopefully bring some context. And if you can pick up one or 2 points along the way, so much the better. Today, we're very privileged to have one of my mentors. It's not Sir yet, is it? It's just plain Ringo Francis, but soon to be knighted, hopefully. But he's somebody who's given us a lot of his time, both as Cubed, as we've grown this business, but also when I was actually developing myself. I spent probably 4 of my most formative years working for Ringo at Zenith, which was a company that subsequently listed and he got rid of a few years back, and now he's able to spend some of his time in retirement. But anyway, he's here today. I'm going to just pop through his career because it's absolutely fascinating. I've asked if I can have the rights to the book, which is going to be working title of From the Beach to the Boardroom, because I believe, Ringo, it may or may not be a true story, you were technically born on a beach. Is that true?
Well, it's definitely true. And my wife says, Ringo, why do you always say you're born on the beach? You were born in a house on the beach. Yeah. So technically, yeah, it's a technicality, but that house, I promise you, on stilts, was on the beach. If you came out and you walked along, you'd be on the beach.
So yeah, so that's good enough for me. It's certainly a lot less concrete than I had growing up in Orpington, but that was Grenada, right? You were born in Grenada.
I was born in Grenada, which, for those who haven't heard about where Grenada is, it's in the southwestern part of the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean. Also known as the Spice Island.
Right.
And guess why? Because they grow lots and lots of spice there on that island. I was born there. I left there at the age of 6. We came to the UK.
That was a decision taken by your parents, or did the whole family up and leave?
Yeah, interesting enough, there is, thankfully. I was almost going to say there was 4 of us. There still is 4 of us. I've got one sister who lives at the moment and have done for the last 40 years in San Diego in California. Right. And my other 2 brothers went back, after living in the UK for a while, they went back to live in Grenada. The reason we came to England as a family was quite simply that my father, although he had a very, very good job, in as much as he was in charge of the water board out there, yet still the salary wasn't sufficient enough to educate all 4 of us. So actually he came to the UK mainly to educate us, right? Because the schools and everything else, education was free here. In the Caribbean, to go to a decent school would have cost an arm and a leg when you've got 4 kids.
So schooling in Grenada at that time was not publicly available at a decent standard?
Yeah, absolutely right, a decent standard. But the privately educated one was very, very good, and that's what most people went to. But to educate 4 kids would have been, 3 years' salary every year.
Yeah,
or the equivalent of.
That's actually, funnily enough, similar to my dad. He was offered the chance for me to go to a private school in South London, and they offered him, half fees to encourage me to go, and he said he couldn't accept because he had a daughter, and he wasn't prepared to do for one what he couldn't afford to do for both. So it's similar in that regard.
Yeah, very similar. So my father came.
So he gave. Would you think he gave up? Would he regard that as making a sacrifice? What did he come to back in that time? Because that would have been in the early 60s.
Yeah, in the early 60s. I wouldn't say he didn't call it a sacrifice. I think when he left Grenada, he looked at it as another adventure.
Right.
Because if you knew my dad, that's how he was, And, coming to England as well as taking us over here and educating us. And I think certainly my older brother had a good career. He was the financial accountant at Mills and Boon. For those of you who are romantics, at Mills and Boon. So he was there. My younger brother ran his own business. My father certainly came to England, and he was very, very successful in what he did. So he realised that lots of Caribbean, call it Windrush, call it whatever you want to call it, a lot of them came to the UK, they settled down, most of them were working. So he realised that most of them will want to do two things. One, buy a house, yeah, and two, maybe after a few years, maybe want to go back home, or maybe not for good, but certainly to go back home on a holiday. So he set up an estate agent in
It's a good idea if you want to buy a house.
yeah, set up an estate agent that was based in Acton on Horn Lane, and it was called Horn Lane Estate Agents. Really thought about the name. And the other thing he did, which was hugely successful, he chartered aeroplanes to bring people back to the Caribbean on holidays, and that was quite successful.
So that's pre-Freddie Laker, so he was a real visionary.
Yeah, he was. Well, was it pre-Fred Laker? Roughly about the same time. Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah,
that was about late 60s.
Yeah, he could have hired. I think he used to hire them from. Is it Caledonian, British Caledonian?
British Caledonian was one of the biggest chartered companies at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he used to hire them, fill the plane up. They all went back and did 4 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever, brought them back, and that was it.
I'm going to have to apologise for this digression to the viewers, because half of this I never knew, and I'm finding it fascinating. Yeah. So you said you thought it was an adventure coming to the UK.
Yeah, he wasn't...
When he came here, did he already have family who are based here, or was it straight into 60s Britain, good luck?
Yeah, straight into 60s Britain, rented a room somewhere, worked, I forgot where he worked though, he actually worked, but he was working nights, because by working nights it actually gave him the days to do things, what he wanted to do. Yeah. So he'll work through the night, he'll come home about 6 in the morning or something, sleep until about 1, did what he needed to do, and that, etc. So eventually, again, he ended up actually being awarded the BEM by the Queen as well for his services to...
What, the British Empire Medal?
Yeah.
Which must have been a very proud day.
Yeah, it was an extremely proud day, but I was too young to remember it. But
he went up to the palace?
Yeah, and I do still have... The one thing I've got of his is that medal. You could say I'm aspiring to get one of those, but not really. But
I think it's long overdue, but that's one for another day.
Yeah.
So do you have any memories as when you were at junior school, when you first came to UK? So that would be sort of age 6 to 11.
Yeah. Do I have memories? Yeah. Very vivid memories, but memories they were. I remember. More so, I remembered friends who I had at the time, and sadly after we left, because we moved, we lived in Willesden, Harlesden, around in Harlesden, and then eventually my dad decided he wanted to a bit of suburban life, and in those days, believe it or not, Kingsbury was the suburb. When he told us we're moving to Kingsbury, we all said, where? Yeah, never heard of it.
Right.
I think we finished school, my dad had moved up, and we got on a 52 bus. I believe it's a 52 or the 83, I can't remember which number, which took us all the way to Kingsbury. Seemed like an age to get there. But
well, once upon a time, White Hart Lane was fields and farmers, but
there we go.
That's a generation ago.
Yeah.
So then when you came to change school, when you went to go to secondary school, did you have much choice in those days, or was it very much the local grammar, there was choice.
So I went to school in Kensal Rise, which is near Willesden, school called Princess Frederica. Yeah.
Right.
Which by all good, it is a good standard school. As I said, we moved from northwest London. Well, no, we moved from northwest London to northwest London, which Kingsbury was further north than we've ever been, I think, before.
Not quite as far as Watford, but getting there.
But we're getting there, yeah. And I went to Claremont High School. So there was two choices. You could have either gone to Kingsbury High School or Claremont. Yeah. And I actually went to Claremont because it was deemed to be a better school.
And at that time, was it mixed sex, or was it boys and girls?
It was mixed sex, and I was if I said only, it seems forever, but I was the first black person in that school.
In the whole school?
In the whole school, yeah.
Right. And that's in that time you're talking
68,
67, 68.
67, 68, yeah. Yeah.
And you were the only black person in the school?
Certainly for the first 2 years.
Right.
I was. And I've got to say, made to be feel very welcome by, my friends who turned out to be my friends, teachers and everything like that. Did I suffer prejudice? You would have had the odd rogue who might have wanted to say something, but to me it was like water was off a duck's back.
So
it didn't
just
really matter.
day to day, just took it as you found it.
Yeah. Well, people say things about the Irish, or say things about the Jews. Why not say something about?
Well, they say about us all.
Yeah.
I've had my fair share as well, but probably slightly different.
Yeah.
So when you were at that secondary school, was there a moment there where you were studying? Because back in the days of O-levels and A-levels, you get to pick and choose a little bit, or did you go the whole 9 yards and do the A-level as well?
Well, one of my achievement was in my first year, and I was in class 1A, which was the top class. I came top of the class, got the vouchers for the books, prize giving days and that, etc. So I think my parents were probably prouder than, is prouder the word? Yeah, they were more prouder than I was.
Yeah.
Of it.
Well, it's probably a bigger deal for them as well. I mean, you probably thought I'm just smarter than them, and that's the way it is. But they probably saw it as something to be celebrated.
I think my dad, if you think about why he came to England, you think that
validation.
He validated his objectives.
So all those years ago, the decision was the right one.
Was the right one, yeah.
And you just did it anyway.
Yeah, we did it.
How about your siblings, your two brothers and sister?
My younger brother came to Claremont as well, so that's why I said so did my sister. And there were other people of colour, so to put it, coming into, because that's what was happening. My older brother went to Copeland in Wembley, Wembley High Street. So.
But all four of you went the full.
Absolutely,
7 years at secondary school or whatever it was.
No, I did 5 years at secondary school, and my last 2 years, or my A-level years, I actually did at Harrow College.
So that's like the sixth form college equivalent.
Yeah, in those days, yeah. Well, it still is, isn't it?
Did you actually get to pick what you studied?
Or? Yeah, I got picked one study. My O-levels, and I actually said to my grandson O-levels the other day, and he says, "What are they, the granddad?"
Yeah, I know.
I think it's now called a GCSE.
At the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah. Yeah, so he said, "What are those?" Yeah, so I did my O-levels. I did 6 of them, and it was a normal thing.
It's funny how you can remember that.
Yeah.
But you do, don't you?
Yeah. And again, something about me was that going to school up until the 3rd year when you had to choose, my ambitions was to be a doctor.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to be a doctor.
Dr. Francis.
Yeah, and then when I came to choose my subjects, I think one of my head of year says, "Don't be so silly, you're useless at science subjects. Why would you won't make it?" So
and you listened, and they poked you in another direction.
Yeah, I listened, and then I came back and did what they in those. I think they still call them the arts.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a painting, but it was economics, geography, history, all of those things.
I would say geography and economics, they're almost quasi-science, aren't they? History is probably more what would be regarded as the arts, but that's a good mix.
No, well, economics is not. It's not precise science, is it?
Well, if you've asked 10 people, you get 11 opinions, isn't that what they say?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But you studied A-level
I
economics?
did my A-level economics and government and politics.
Cool.
Yeah, which before it was called government and politics, it's called British Constitution. So it's all about Constitution, Parliament, and that, etc. So that's my 2 A-levels I did. And I actually got a and a B, A in economics and a B in government and politics.
And then, of course, the big wide world beckons. What happened next?
Well, what happened next was that at the college we were doing, I was able to do my foundation in my ACCA.
Oh, right. This is the first time
it carried on when it first came on.
So accountancy first reared its welcome head at that time.
Yeah, well... It did and it didn't, because again, my uncle, who is, because again he's still alive, but he was a professor at the University of the West Indies. Right. He was an authority of law of the sea.
Oh, I remember you saying that. Yeah. David Bresnik talking about that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, because again, the law firm that we used, one of his peers became the head. That was Cameron McKenna.
Yeah.
So my uncle took the academic route, right, and he was a world authority on law of the sea, which again, just couldn't fathom out what is there to learn about Law of the Sea. But
if you're spinning down the Straits of Hormuz this week, you probably could do it.
You probably could. Yeah. No, well, I think what he did. Certainly, after he qualified, he went back. He was a professor at the University of the West Indies.
Where was that? That wasn't in Grenada.
No, that was in Trinidad.
Right,
which is only 90 miles away. Yeah.
Yeah, because some people because Trinidad is just up from South America, and Tobago is often
Venezuela and all
together.
That, yeah.
So Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, that's all that neck of the woods.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So he's based in Trinidad.
So you do know your geography, yeah. Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've actually been there. I've never been to Grenada.
Yeah.
I love Trinidad.
So he's based in Trinidad. He's retired now. But he said to me, because we always spoke, what do you want to do? I said, look, one thing I do want to do in my life, I want to work for myself. Yeah.
And that was then?
Yeah, and that was then. I wanted to work for myself. And I'll tell you my first ever business that I had, and I'll tell you that in a minute after I finish this.
What age is this now? You're
15, 16.
So at 15, 16, you're thinking, I want to create something.
15, 16, I want to work for myself.
Yeah.
That's what it was. My father was working for himself. I could have gone and worked with him, but I wanted to work for myself. Right?
But that must have been quite a big role model, watching your father doing his own thing. Do you think that was largely responsible?
That was responsible as well. But I knew I wanted to do that, and my uncle said to me, Ringo, if you want to do something like that, why don't you get yourself a profession? Be an accountant, right? You don't have to be an accountant for the rest of your life, but it will help you with your business, or study law, that will help you do business. And that was his advice he gave me. So at Harrow College, they just brought in the ACCA Foundation, so I stayed on after my A-levels and did that.
If Mark, unfortunately, is not able to join us today, but one of the questions I know he was interested in asking you was, to what extent did having that foundation in ACCA as a profession, do you think you could have achieved what you did had you not gone down that route?
Good question. Very good question, actually. And that's a hard one for me to answer.
Yeah, because, I'm very similar to myself in that I was doing engineering over here, and then I did chartered accountancy. And I never really knew where I was going to be, but you knew it would always be a foundation. You didn't know it was necessarily going to be usable, but that foundation, ACCA, subsequent layers...
Yeah, and I went on to do my PE1, PA2, whereas I was working at Zenith Carburettors. Remember that name? We'll come back to Zenith.
We'll come back to the Carburettors.
Carburettors after.
And no doubt the Duke of Edinburgh at some point.
Yeah, well, if we must. God
I know you don't like to name drop, but I will for you.
Yeah. So
the question is, do you think it gave you something which made setting up your business either easier or gave you a bit of more extra confidence?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure it did, because what I was able to do, certainly in my business life, is that I can talk to somebody and somebody will talk to me about revenue, right? And I was able to follow it right down the P&L and across to the balance sheet and sort of see the effect it will have if I did this, yeah? And one of the other things that it taught me was always try to manage the downside. Didn't always achieve it.
Right.
Yeah, but if I made a decision, I always went through my head, if it went wrong, right, what would be the consequences of it going wrong? And if those consequences, if I can manage those consequences, then I'll have a go at it. Right. If I couldn't manage it, right, I will think it's a risk too far to go, so I wouldn't do it.
So it was about assessing the risk.
Yeah.
What if planning... And then, can I do something about it?
Yeah. A simple example. I need to invest 100,000 into doing something. Yeah. A project, or need to. Oh, all right. Let's just do it simple. I need 100,000 to buy that. If I bought it and I couldn't sell it, right, the downside would be I was 100,000 pounds down. Yeah. Right. Could I afford to be 100,000 down? If the answer was no, I wouldn't take the risk. The answer was yes, I would take the risk. Yeah. That's probably an extreme example, but that's probably a way of actually...
But a lot of this you'd be doing almost intuitively, do you feel? You mentioned just earlier Zenith Carburettors.
Yeah.
Is that the next step out of ACCA foundation and passing?
Yeah, something else. I mean, my first job, and my first business, which I'm still proud of, was a car washing business.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was, that was in your teens?
That was in 13, 14, 15.
Right.
Yeah. And that wasn't not a static car wash. What I did actually, first of all, because where we lived, most people where we lived had 2 cars.
Right.
I'll knock on the door, can I wash your car?
Mm-hmm.
I used to charge 10 shillings to wash a car. Yeah.
That's 50p
and again, for those of us who were born.
The Gen Z.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to charge 50p for the car. And eventually I had a whole round, so I got people in, gave them 25p. Yeah.
So you're subbing it out?
I was subbing it out. And then after they washed, I used to go around and pick up the money and pay them on the Friday, the guys who did the washing. Yeah.
So again, though, thinking back to that time, 50p a wash, and you were knocking out quite a few.
Yeah.
That was reasonable money for a teenager.
Yeah, it was reasonable money. I probably, you'd probably end up with anything between £5 or £10 in those days. So, so that was good. Yeah.
What did you do with that money as a teenager? Were you experiencing the urge to get out and about, or was it all being saved away? Were you a bit of both?
It wasn't saved, if I just put it this way. It wasn't saved, and
you enjoyed yourself?
Well, yeah, no, maybe for another time I'll tell you. Yeah, but
okay,
it was nice, yeah.
So you've done your ACCA?
Yeah, I did the foundation. Then I got a job at Honeypot Lane, which isn't far from my house. It was Kingsbury. So it was the road it was Honeypot Lane. It led from Kingsbury to Stanmore, for those of you who know that area.
Top of the Jubilee line for tube mappers?
Absolutely. Stanmore was the top.
Yeah.
Kingsbury somewhere.
A little bit over.
Down. Yeah. It's Kingsbury, Queensbury, and then Stanmore.
Yeah.
If my memory serves me right. So I got a job at Zenith Carburettors, and my job, I worked with the finance director. I was the assistant to the finance director.
Right.
And my job was...
Big company at that time?
Very big company at that time. And I go back and I think...
Number of staff, roughly?
1,800.
Blimey.
But wait, 1,800, right? But the annual revenues was 10 million. Yeah, so you've got to work your way down. Yeah. I did the budget, so I knew, like, my boss, who was the finance director, his salary was 5,000 a year plus car.
And right, there's some context for everybody.
Yeah, so that's what he did. And I did the budget, right? And there was, as well as Stanmore, Honeypot Lane, we had a big factory down in Deptford, which is South London.
Yeah.
And my job, what I had to do, was to go all the department heads, saying to them that this is how many carburettors we want to make a year. What do you need to achieve that? So I did that. I did it on a spreadsheet, and again, for contents. Spreadsheet wasn't something that you saw on a computer, because computers wasn't even, the calculator had just come out.
I was going to say, this is mid late 70s?
Yeah, a big A3.
A3, 14-column paper.
Yeah. And that was our spreadsheet, and you did that, cross-cast it, and did whatever you had to do. So so I used to go around to all the heads, bang, did it, put it all into the spreadsheet, and I'm sitting at my desk one day, and he came up to me and he says, "Francis, have you finished the budget yet?" I said, yeah. And I handed it to him. And as soon as I handed it to him, he just went, rip.
Literally tore it up.
Tore it up. Didn't even look at it. I said, "Come on, Jack, you haven't even looked at it. What's going on?" He says, "I know exactly what's in there. Go back and tell them they all need to cut whatever they've given you by 20%. Right?
That's a flex budget, I think we now call that.
So, because
back to the drawing board.
So back to the drawing board, I had to do it all. Eventually we got the budget, and again, Richard, I think, again, a bit of colour to it all. It was a 3-day a week, and most people listening to this probably wasn't even born during the 3-day a week.
Bang in the 70s, right?
Yeah,
so
bang in there.
That was
3 days a week.
That was the winter of discontent.
Yeah. and again, another good thing about that time, that's when company cars first started, because the company car was a way of getting away from the income and prices policy which the government had at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a way. So they gave them a car that came under the radar.
So that was before the tax inspectors got wind of the idea and started putting it as a benefit in kind. So that was a way
exactly
you could pay.
Away from it. So you came to them, you gave them a car.
Fully expensed.
Yeah. There we go.
No one needs to know about it.
Yeah. All above board. It wasn't.
Yeah. The company's paying the money.
Pay for it. Yeah. So that's what. So I went back, did it, came back, and it was making a loss. Yeah, which I was fortunate enough. He took me to a board meeting, Jack, and he's saying, "Well, look, guys, we've done the budget. This is where we are." And with Jack, what he was very good at was the stock markets and investments. Yeah. And because the company was a monopoly, and we'll go back to that in a minute, right, had a lot of cash. So he was using that cash. So we ended up, the previous year, we actually ended up with a profit, right? But it wasn't from trading.
Other income,
right? What he did with other income. So he was seen as a bit of a star, actually, in the boardroom.
So he got listened to.
Yeah, seen. So he was actually saying, and again, probably is a story that, no, that was the second year. So he got listened to, yeah. And he said, okay, tell you what we do, right? Okay. Because we've just bought Soilex and all that, we can cut down on our R&D department, right? In fact, and the board says, yeah, it's a good idea, yeah.
So we'll take that cost out.
So we'll take that cost out, and then we're getting somewhere near to a trading profit. The second
was it a private company or was it a quoted business?
It was a quoted business at the time. Second year, yeah, did the budget again. Probably pleased to know that my first edition wasn't sort of put in the bin because I'd learnt then, and everything. And I think he gave me the thing that I learned. But a significant thing happened because the previous year. So what I should have said, the previous year, going back from memory, was as well as what Jack was saying, right? Look, we don't need salespeople, right? Because the year before we'd bought Soilex, which was our only competitor, right? So I said, we don't need salespeople. All we have to do, right, is phone up the car companies, understand how many cars they're making, and there's our top line.
So and they were literally, after their acquisition...
Yeah,
were the only manufacturer provider of carburettors in the UK.
Yeah,
right.
So all they had to do was phone up Fords, Chryslers, all of those great companies,
get their costs right,
get the cars right, bang, and everyone said that was a great plan, Jack. and also, do remember also then he had his eyes on chopping out the R&D department as well. So I was in the budget the second year. I rang up the car companies. I remember ringing them up, and I rang Ford's up and say if you were expecting 100,000 carburettors, they said, "Oh, we only need 10,000." And I thought, that's strange. Maybe it was a mistake.
Alarm bells.
Yeah. Rang another company. I forget what it was Chrysler, one of them, and it was a similar story. And I went to Jack and I said, "Jack, I think we've got a problem." He said, "What do you mean we've got a problem?" I've said, I've just phoned him up and give a story. He says, give me the phone. So he's picked up the phone and I can hear him go, yep. And he went ashen completely. And he said, what? It's called an injection. An injection, and that takes the place of a carburetor. And the guy on the other phone must have said, yeah. He put the phone down and you can just see, literally. He'd gone. He'd actually gone.
End of the monopoly business.
End of, right. Yeah, that's the story with where it was. So, effectively...
So that's a lesson that you learned right back then.
The lesson I've learned then was that you've got to stay close to your customers, salespeople, or be next to your customers.
Lesson number one, understand what your customer needs.
Well, stay close to them. Even probably more important, because more times than not, your customers will tell you what they need. Yeah, you can go to them, but more times than not, there's a need that's created. Lesson number two, right, you've got to keep innovating. right? I.e., we've got carburetors, we make carburetors, but all of a sudden something called an injection, we couldn't actually respond to that.
It was too late.
It's too late, and the company went under.
So Zenith Carburetors,
Yeah,
a monopoly business that managed to go bankrupt because it was unaware of developments coming in.
It wasn't close to its customers, so it was getting no feedback from the customers and hence the market, what was happening, right? And number two, it had thought nothing about innovating, thought that was it. That's our carburetors, we've done what we need to do, let's move on.
So Zenith Carburetors is now dead and buried. What happens to Ringo Francis next?
Well, again, just keep Zenith in mind, and what happened to me
It's
next.
imprinted. It's there. It's hard to forget.
So what happened to me next was I got a job with a company called UKO as an internal auditor, and they were United Kingdom Opticals.
Right.
They made glasses, as well as making the frames. They actually made the lenses as well.
Right.
It was a big company. It was a lot bigger than Zenith. And my job, there was 50 odd companies in the group.
This is London again?
No, all over the UK. All over the UK, from Birmingham to Wales.
Nationwide.
Nationwide. And I got a job in the internal audit department, and we used to go around, do the internal audit, making sure that procedures and processes are followed, and everything was documented. So I've got to say that we weren't very well liked, and I thought being an internal auditor would have been much softer than being an external auditor.
But we were disappointed.
Yeah.
How many sites would they have around the UK?
Well, there's 52 companies.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah,
It's a big group.
Yeah, it's a big group, 52. Yeah, and in fact, I'm not too sure what's actually happened to that company now.
And that was, how long did you spend as an internal auditor?
I could only do a year. I only did a year.
Right.
At it. Because the job was, I left home on a Sunday night and I came back on a Friday. And it was hotels and everything else. And also what really, really motivated me not to stay there longer, I just met my wife, Barbara.
That's the now Mrs. Francis.
Yeah, just met her then. So, yes, so that was...
Sacrifice.
Yeah. So from there, I then got a job as the UK management accountant for AB Dix. Yeah. Made photocopying machines.
Right.
Made one of the first word processors. And before you answer, it was A, full stop, B, full stop, D-I-C-K. And yes, there was an AB Dick the Third. American company.
Yeah. Right, so it was American doing rather well over here.
Yeah.
But you were the management accountant.
I was the UK management accountant.
And so you had to prepare stuff and submit it up to head office, which was somewhere in the middle of America.
Yeah, so, okay, so so the challenge there, Richard, was always, remember I said calculators had just come out.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about computers on their desks. It was big mainframes.
What sort of age would you be now? You say you met Barbara now?
21, 22.
Right, okay.
21, 22.
So this is mid to late 70s we're talking.
Yeah,
now.
so I was the management accountant. I had to, on the third day, following the month end, give a flash result.
Yeah.
By the fifth day, I had to firm it up.
Right.
And I think you probably appreciate that. The task that was involved, there was no computers there, everything was done manually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that basically means tell us basically what your sales and your estimated profit is 3 days after the end of the month, and then 2 days later, it better be right.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely. It's a very strict discipline.
Yeah. And
very American, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, very American. Effectively, if you knew your revenue numbers was right and you knew your margins, then you can do the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the two key numbers there. Because unless somebody went and bought a new building or they hired 10,000 people and didn't know about it,
you shouldn't stick too far away from that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. Yeah, so I was doing that. Stayed there for a couple of years.
Right.
And then from there, one of my friends, I'm not sure if you met them before, the Greeks. Yeah.
What, the rag trade Greeks?
Yeah, right.
At the back of Oxford Street?
Yeah.
I've met them over Christmas one year. Memory's a little bit vague.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah.
I went into business with them.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So I did a stint in the rag trade, and again, it was we had what they call a couple of winners, and we made a lot of money from it. We were very, very young at the time, I'd say 22, 23, 24.
But you met them how? You met them...
They went to Kingsbury High School.
Oh, so you knew of them. They were kind of contemporaries.
They came and said,
contemporaries.
Yeah. And Ringo, can you come and help us? We've just got this place in Western and we don't know what to do, and we don't know how to do an invoice, and we don't know how...
So you were helping them with the sort of financial support?
Yeah, all of those things. That's what I was doing with them, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was a partner in that business.
Do you remember the name, or was it just...
It was called Bubbles. Did you think? Very, very original. Bubbles, Greeks, bubble and sweet.
Yeah. Bubbles. It was called Bubbles, literally.
Yeah. And believe it or not, we sold in those days. Top Shop, John Lewis was selling to all of them. Right.
You said they had one or two, crackers of products.
Winners.
And they would be selling. Winners? They'd sell thousands.
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands actually.
Right.
And we made a load of money. A lot of it. We enjoyed ourselves with it, yeah.
Common theme.
Yeah, being young and that, we actually enjoyed ourselves with it. And then after that, yeah, that great season we had, the next season we had weather like this, yeah.
What, wet and
horrible. Now, with the rag trade, like now, at this very moment, right, what you would be doing, you would be selling your autumn range. Yeah.
Right. So you're 6 months,
for
trading 6 months ahead.
In September. Yeah.
Right.
So this lot we were doing in September, we were selling them all and the weather got bad. And the shops were buggers really, and all they were doing, the groups were doing, is that's all right, you got to deliver it at 2:00. You got there 1 minute past 2, they cancelled it, the order was late.
So they'd find a reason, reason, if they could.
To cancel it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is not sustainable as far as not so much as far as my mentality is concerned. It just drove me mad,
Yeah. Just didn't seem a very fair model.
People could be so unfair. I was going to say dishonest. I guess it wasn't dishonest, but just wasn't fair.
Right, literally applying the letter and the dots of the law.
Absolutely. And then we got stuck with thousands and thousands of garments.
Yeah.
And I remember this guy came in. He was a jobber, right? And all he did, he says, right, count the hangers. We count the hangers. He said, I'll give you £1 a hanger.
The end.
The end. And that was it. So you had to live on your reserve. And I thought, no, I didn't want to do that.
How many years were you with Bubbles?
Probably about 3 years. So I'm
getting, a fair stint.
Yeah. Might be 3 or 2 years, yeah.
Are you getting a bit bored? Are you getting a bit frustrated? Are you thinking, no, this is not quite a fair industry that I want to be in?
Yeah, exactly right. And I spoke to my... and that's the time when I met Colin Fogarty. And Colin was working for Diversey at the time. Right. He was a salesman for Diversey. And he's explaining to me, because again, where we were, right, there were people next door selling dishwashers, and the bloke was talking to me about it. And I thought, oh yeah, dishwashers, it's dead simple. You put a bit of washing up fairy liquid in it and up it went. But couldn't be further from the truth, the products that needed in a dishwasher. So I met Colin, and Colin was explaining to me, look, guys, that's what we do. This is how much we make. The margins in it were 60-odd%.
Yeah, big, aren't they? Yeah, this is on the chemical side.
On the chemical side. Yeah. I thought, that's not that. So resources I had left, we took a warehouse in Islington, had the products made for us in Luton,
Just up the road from here?
Yeah, just up the road from here. And we had the products made from Luton, and we went off selling them to whoever we could. And again...
and am I right, that would be Francis Chemicals?
That would be Francis Chemicals,
Your first foray into
into the hygiene, cleaning and hygiene.
Cleaning and hygiene. And do you remember when that would be?
Yeah. I sold it in 93.
Right.
So that would have been in 1986.
Okay.
86, 87. No, 85. Yeah, 85. Could have been, 84, because I think we had it for about 9 years.
Right.
And we grew it.
Is that your first company with £1 million sales, from memory?
That's the first company, yeah. With in excess of £1 million.
And how did you go about starting that? You've met Colin.
Met Colin.
He introduced you to the suppliers? Or
No, he didn't. We found the suppliers.
These are the
by
guys in
asking
Luton?
the guys in Luton. We found them and they made them for us, labelled it, delivered it to us, and then we delivered it into the customers.
And was that a large range of products, or was that
No, it
just
was relatively small, mainly in and around kitchens.
Right.
So we wouldn't have like the glass cleaner and the floor polishes and all that. It's the dishwasher, it's the rinse aid, it's the oven cleaner.
But is that in the retail or more the commercial world?
No, commercial world. It was never retail. I think we've never actually operated in the retail space.
So your customers would be what, restaurants and
hotels, yeah, and that. When we were at Francis Chemicals, one of our greatest achievement was that we had every single hotel on Park Lane was a customer.
For your startup business?
Yeah.
You had all of them?
Park Lane, yeah.
So from the Dorchester up and down?
Right the way through.
Hilton?
Yeah. And how we did that was that we virtually gave the first customer that we took on was the Dorchester, because we knew that if we were doing the Dorchester and we went into other hotels and we said we're doing the Dorchester, they'll listen.
So that's a good lesson. So by taking or winning a customer with high profile, it gives you the ability, is it fair to say, punch a bit above your weight?
Significantly above our weight.
Right, okay.
But we had to do it to grow it. Yeah.
So and would you even go to the point of selling to the Dorchester at better terms to get in the door?
Tell you what, we were lucky. We didn't have to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Because at the time the Dorchester was being badly let down by their current suppliers, which was Ecolab at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I remember Joey Jenkins, who was food and beverage manager, actually said, went in and saw her, okay, like what you say, Ringo, we'll give you a go, but I'll warn you this now, we've got such shit service from these people. If you're not significantly better, I will squeeze you in between your legs so hard they'll hear you screaming up and down Park Lane. So to keep my manhood, I made sure.
So the card was marked, as was a few other things?
Yeah, so I kept it, yeah. So we did that, and that helped us through.
And that really was then a leading customer. You dropped that into conversations when you were selling.
Absolutely.
And so over that, you said 7, 8, 9 years of Francis Chemicals, how many customers would you have by the end of that?
Difficult to...
But
I can't remember.
You're selling £1 million worth of stuff a year.
Yeah. No, it was... Yeah, and it grew significantly. So much so that in 92, 93, Diversity bought the business from us because they tried very, very hard to actually take those customers of ours and Park Lane and the hotels, and they weren't successful. So you know what they say, if they couldn't win it that way, they just came and bought it.
So would you say they were bordering on a dirty tricks campaign, or no, just undercut?
Yeah, undercut. They were doing all the things like we're the big IM. We were owned by, at that time they were owned by Molson's, the Canadian brewery.
Right.
We're the big IM. We can do a better service, etc.
Yeah.
And
so they were claiming they could better your offering.
Yeah.
And then they said no.
No. We're happy with.
All right, we'll buy you.
Outcomes. Yeah.
And they literally. So that was your first business that you were offered some money to sell.
Yeah.
And did it come out of the blue, or were you kind of expecting it?
I knew something was going on because all our customers were ringing us up and saying, well, we've had Diversity in here offering us this and that. And I thought there was just too many of them for it to be a coincidence. Yeah.
So your intelligence, your feedback from your customers, close to your customers.
Close, they were actually saying to me, there's something going on. Yeah. And then I had the phone call from David Brooks, remember it quite well. Ringo, David Brooks here. Would you like to sell the company? I said, no, not interested in selling it.
Right.
We had a company, we were making a good living out of it. He said, well, why don't you come and have lunch with me? The worst thing that can happen is that...
You get a free lunch. Yeah. Is that what he said?
Yeah, he did. So,
and he was what? He's like the sales director or the managing director? Managing director of diversity in the UK?
Yeah.
Oh.
He was the managing director then. So we did that, had lunch with him. He said to me, I'm going to offer you, I forget what, no, I know what the offer was eventually. And he made me an offer, like something like 50p or something like that.
What, 50p in the pound of sales?
Sales, yeah.
Right.
And then I said, I'll think about it. Forgot about him, and then about 2 or 3 months later, he rang me up and said, have you thought about it? I said, yeah. And he says, and? I said, it's not enough, nowhere near enough. And then he said to me, well, name your price. And I said, if I was going to sell this business, it'd have to be somewhere near a pound for pound to do it. Yeah. And he came back, wasn't a pound for pound, it was less, but it wasn't significantly less. Had a chat with Colin and everybody and thought, well, let's do it. There was the offer of our people going to work in at Diversity, which I did. I didn't. I had no intentions of going to work for them. In fact, when we signed the deal, because it was delayed, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was delayed because in those days it was the environmental, and they hadn't done the environmental audit on the premises we had in Tottenham.
Right, because you only had the one premises, right?
Yeah, so they said, look, we can't do this and Canada won't sign it off.
Right, without
that. So I was in the office one day and this bloke pulled up with a rig. I thought he was drilling for oil. Yeah, started drilling and taking samples. And lo and behold, what did he do? He went for a main cable and the whole of Tottenham was out. Was out of electricity. At that time I thought, no, I'm off. I left them. I left them to it. So anyhow, look, it was delayed. And I'd actually planned that when we'd actually completed, I was going to take my 2 boys at the time and Barbara, we were going to go to the Caribbean. And the reason I wanted to go to the Caribbean, I wanted to show my sons where we were from, etc. Right. Yeah. So
from David coming back to you and getting close to what you had in your head to start with and actually signing that contract, just for people who might wonder how long the process might take.
3 months.
So from start to finish,
because of
including the power out in Tottenham, including the environmental survey, 3 months start to finish, and then they made you the offer that was acceptable. Yeah. At the time, Colin was your only other partner?
Yeah, it was only Colin, yeah.
And he said, if it's good for you, it's good for me?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And you sold it?
We sold it.
And off you went to, where did you go in the Caribbean?
We went to Jamaica.
Right, that's where Barbara's from. Yeah.
And then from Jamaica we flew down to Grenada. So we did Twin Island.
Island hopping, I think they call it in the brochures.
Yeah, island hopping,
How long was that? Was it literally a road trip for as long as you wanted? Or
yeah, we were out there for about 2 months or so.
So you literally were like making it up as you went along, saw some relatives.
Yeah, saw all of that, yeah. Showed my sons where I was born and
the famous beach.
Yeah. And etc. So it was nice time to spend with them, because previous to that, you're always working and
they're at school, they're doing this, you're doing that. There's never enough time, is there?
So but
you literally down tools, road trip, family.
Yeah.
93? Would you say 93?
93, yeah.
Right. And part of the deal had been to give you employment in the mothership, or
not me, to give the guys, Colin and all that was working and that, etc. Yeah. So I remember this distinctly. So I've flown in. I think we flew into Manchester at that time. I don't know why we did it in Manchester, and we were driving down, and I had my phone in the car rang, and it was David Brooks. Ringo, how are you? Great. Really good to have you back. And that, etc. What are you going to do? I said, to be honest with you, David, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've not thought about what I was going to do. I've been, just
Chilling.
And he said, everybody I spoke to, they all like you, yeah? And I want you to come and work for us. And I said, oh, that's very flattering. I said, in what capacity? He says, well, you'll sit on the board, yeah? And what we want you to be, be in charge of like all the sales guys, yeah? Right, so effectively being, operations. Yeah.
So it wasn't troubleshooting. It was more
So I had a team.
Customer interfacing.
Yeah, I had a team. Yeah.
But at that time, Diversey would have hundreds of people, right? Thousands, hundreds.
There must have been 900 people
in the UK.
Yeah, but David Brooks said he liked me and his people liked me and they wanted
customers
me.
Liked
they
you.
didn't want me floating around and
start setting up again,
causing problems. Yeah. Well, no, I couldn't set up for 3 years.
I know. Yeah. I know that story.
Because, yeah.
So 93, 96 beckons.
Yeah, so 93, yeah. So here we go. So I thought, well, I had nothing planned and seriously didn't have anything planned.
So they gave you a good salary.
Everything.
Give you a car?
Yeah, what I wanted to. The only people who had Mercedes in there was myself and Brooks. Right. I had a Mercedes car, so yeah. So they did that. So I worked and I was seeing a lot of people, a lot of customers. Met a lot of people. Met Big Tony there.
Tony was at Diversey at this time.
Yeah, met Big Tony.
That's Tony Cousins.
Yeah, met a few others. Guys, we all got on really, really well. Diversey was then sold to Unilever.
Right, so the Canadians have exited.
Yeah, and Unilever now
taken over. That's they're Dutch, aren't they? Or
Anglo-Dutch.
Anglo-Dutch, yeah.
Yeah. Head office on Blackfriars Bridge.
Yeah, that's you. Oh, my mum worked for them when the first job out of school.
There we go.
PA.
Comes round, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot of connections here.
Yeah. So they took over, right? And by them taking over, you can see the whole change, right? Because Unilever, great company as they are, right? Quite simply, right? They can make sort of stuff. They'll put it out to a distributor, and they were away from the customer.
Right.
Yeah? And that was what they were. That was the business model that they wanted with Diversey. They didn't want direct selling and anything like that. They wanted the distributors to do all that. They were just going to feed the distributor with products and etc. A lot of our customers weren't very happy with that because, again, our business was very, very service orientated.
So at this time, with Diversey selling to Unilever, the customer base for that bit of the business was what? Still the same? Still restaurants, hotels?
Yeah,
or
hotels.
Was it broader than that?
No, restaurants, hotels. When we went into Diversey, we went into a lot of food factories and that as well.
Right.
So there was all that. But Unilever, most people Unilever don't know what an end user customer look like.
No.
They just don't. It's just not their game.
Well, they're a brand warehouse, really, aren't they, Unilever?
It's all about brands. So anyhow, we, with all the complaints we were getting and all the apprehension a lot of our customers were saying, I had a conversation with a few of the other lads in there and said, look, guys, you know what, it's been a great 3 years, yeah. I've learnt a lot about the industry, learnt a lot about everything. I think I can do this again. Yeah. I start again. And
was this quite hush hush at this time?
Yeah, very hush hush. And there's
so who was in the circle of trust at this point?
It was obviously Foggy was, Derek Laffery was.
That's Colin Tony, was, yourself,
Gary Caps was.
Oh right, big Gary.
Yeah. Who else? There's a few. There was a few of them. So and I'm not going to name any more in case
you've missed. It's like the Oscar ceremony. You can't thank everybody, can you?
Yeah.
But basically, that 3 years had been used
to
work out and seek out the talent.
Well, it was never. It wasn't that. It was when the whole business model changed, and Unilever wanted to do that, and customers were complaining. So we saw it as an opportunity.
Okay, so again, you're getting direct feedback from your customers
saying what the hell's that?
What was wrong with the old ways?
Yeah, I don't want these people in my place and that, etc. And it was all. So we went round and.
So they were their own worst enemy in a way.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we went round and we picked up, we decided to start. Got some offices in a warehouse in Campfield Road.
Where?
Campfield Road in St Albans.
Right.
Got a few people, a few different factories to make products for us, like Selden and all that.
Oh, the brothers up in Derbyshire, Selden.
Yeah, made products for us. And we gave it all to them and thinking, well, okay. And I knew that once I got to a certain size, I probably want to make it ourselves. Yeah, and then hence the Northern Ireland trip.
But at this moment, you haven't actually done the deed, or have you?
Yeah, it was 96.
96 was when you created Zenith Chemical Systems.
Yeah, Zenith Chemical Systems in 1996.
But wasn't there a little bit of legal...
There certainly was.
Bit of litigation thrown in.
That was like a horror story, wasn't it? So
I don't know. I mean, I've never heard it from the horse's mouth. So
yeah, that's
how do you remember the litigation?
How do I remember? I remember coming home, and Barbara was at the front door, and she had a stack of papers that high. We were served with papers to go into the High Court, right?
Because basically, it was saying what?
That we'd broken our restricted covenants.
Which was 3 years?
No, the sale and purchase contract was 3 years, so they didn't do me on that. What they did me on was on my employment contract.
Right.
Or they tried to do me on my employment contract.
Did they bring other folk into the legal mess? Did they bring any of the other guys?
Yeah, I think he got into it. Derek certainly didn't. Right. I think Colin did, and I think Gary Capps for some reason.
Yeah, so there was a few of you they went for.
They brought in. No, well, primarily they went for me, right? Primarily, I think that they did it also to slow us down a little bit, because again, as all of these things, 9 out of 10 of them, right, they never actually end up in front of a court. It's always settled on the stairs.
Yeah, settled on the courtroom steps.
Yeah.
So you think it was primarily to slow you down?
Yeah, because they went on there was my service contract, but they knew my service contract was just too wide. It was too wide. So it would have been thrown out as being unreasonable. Yeah, because they can't stop you making a living from here to Scotland
with your skill set that you've developed.
They can't stop.
But they can only say you can't copy me and you can't be next door.
Yeah, and that's the things that they do. Yeah. So
how long did that
went on for about 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months of my life, cost a fortune as well. But hey,
you were back
that's the commercial world, isn't it?
You were back with Cameron McKenna at this point?
Yeah, I was.
Did they represent you?
Cameron McKenna did a very good job for me. They did a really good job.
And any lessons learnt from that experience?
Lessons learnt from that experience.
Because it's like someone who's got a lot deeper pockets than you raises a stack of documents this thick, dumps it at your home doorstep, and most people's reaction would be to swallow hard and think, "Oh my God."
No, well,
you were very confident of your position.
I was confident in my position, and I think the lesson I learned: always get a good lawyer as well, because the lawyer we had a big reputation. As big a reputation as what they had.
Right.
So they were raised.
So your dad was as big as their dad.
Yeah, and they were, you were fighting fire with fire.
So what did the settlement on the courtroom steps?
We all just took our own costs.
So you agreed to bear your own costs and walk away.
Yeah, that's why I think that it was all a ploy to actually slow us down.
Right. So they took their costs, which were bigger than yours.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, but our costs ordinarily would have been bigger, but because I had family and friends rates.
Yeah. And so now Zenith Chemical Systems, so effectively your second business in the same sector, emerges in 96. Well, 96. At that point, did you think anything different? Did you think about introducing new systems? Another question Mark was going to raise was about the use of technology, and at what point that has touched your career, if at all.
It has, not to an extent that you would think so, but the main thing that we saw, when, again, in diversity, we were there until 96. I was looking at the market and trying to understand what was going on. Yeah. There's a lot of people that I knew, suddenly they were at the Hilton Hotel, they've left to go and run a restaurant somewhere, right? Because again, I'm not sure if you remember, back in '96 there weren't that many restaurants about.
No,
This was Express.
Yeah, this was before. Yeah, you'd had your standard
Explosion.
Wimpy, McDonald's, and KFC, the takeaways.
They're even smaller. Yeah,
you'd have your Bernie Inns, your steakhouses,
exactly right,
and one or two pizza outfits,
Exactly
like maybe
right.
Pizza Hut and Pizza Land.
exactly right.
That was more or less it.
Yeah. So I don't even think Pizza Hut existed then, but neither here nor there. But what we looked for people who were good at what they did, yeah, had ambition, and they were going to do it. So, for example, we got very, very close to the K brothers and the K cousin. So Jonathan started Prezzo's, right? ASK was Adam and Sam K, right? We had Karen Jones in Cafe Rouge.
Right.
Right. So we were looking for
Was
people
that Cafe Rouge before or after Whitbread?
before they sold it to Whitbread.
Yeah.
Right. So restaurants and our culture was changing, the eating out culture was changing. Yeah. So no longer was it Wimpy and fish and chips, it was a French brasserie, it was more pizzas, it was pasta, it was all of that. And they were just growing, and the high street was there. And it was
I remember Cafe Rouge. That was that grew quick, didn't it? I remember that coming to the high street.
Yeah, Karen Jones and Roger Myers. Yeah, and so from then, Richard, right, we thought, right, attach ourselves to these people. They'll only grow, and with them growing, you grow.
So you're effectively looking to pick a winners.
Yeah.
That are growing into the space you want to be in,
or the space
and developing the strong relationship.
Yeah, the space we thought that was going to grow.
Yeah,
because we knew hotels. Yeah, so we had our fair share of hotels. Yeah, but we knew the next big thing was restaurants. So if I say to you like Nando's, which the company still supplies Nando's now, we supply Nando's when I had one restaurant. We supply pizza. We supply Prezzo's when I had one restaurant. We supply ASK when they had one restaurant.
Yeah.
So all of those, and they grew into hundreds.
And the Nando's was the South African brothers, right? The Eindhoven, is it? Brothers?
Yeah, Robbie Eindhoven, Robbie and yeah.
And so you supplied them, because I remember when I first came across you, they had 6.
Yeah.
And you were there when they had 1.
One. Yeah. So,
bit similar to Gourmet Burger later on,
So,
1. King's Road.
So attach yourself, to them.
What about on the other side of the team? Because here you are, you liked, people want to do business with you. Mm-hmm. People like to do business with people they like. So you've got these strong relationships. So you're confident about developing sales. What about building a successful team to support you? How did you go about that? Because you're selling and selling and selling a Ferrari out front, but you need that admin to be right behind you.
Yeah, I mean, the factories we chose to make our products to start with, they were quite good.
Are you still primarily chemicals at this point?
Yeah, chemicals, yeah.
I mean, the name Zenith Chemical Systems suggests that, but I know later you had a lot
hygiene,
more products.
We had a lot more products, yeah. In the office, we had Clinton Locke.
Right.
He was the Arsenal accountant. To start.
I'll gloss over that.
Hold it again soon.
No, I'll gloss over that.
Yeah. So he was the accountant for Arsenal, and he came. I'm trying to remember how came across Clinton. So then he came. He was full time in, and he ran, as well as the accounts, he ran the office.
You still at St Albans at this point?
Yeah, we're still at St Albans at this point. I think you probably might know Joan Condom. She was in the office.
Joanne Condon, she was employee number 1 or 2, wasn't she?
She was the first one on the payroll.
And she was support?
Yeah, she was support. So we built that support. We had the Dave Haggers. Dave was with me at Francis Chemicals. He followed me right through.
Yeah.
Dave and quite a few of the other people in the warehouse and etc. So effectively, there were people who knew what they were doing.
But did you go about building a team with a plan, or did you go in with an organisation in mind and thought, I need 1 of them and 2 of them, or
no,
was it just organic?
No, it was organic in a way that people we employed were what we thought they were as good as or the best in their field. Yeah,
right.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Right. So basically, Zenith Chemical Systems is there.
Yeah.
It grows, and then you dabbled with the stock market.
Yep. We and the reason why
That's a big jump. That is. That's a decade or so, I think.
Yeah. The reason why it wasn't about vanity, it was about really, we knew certainly the market in the UK, that's our market and our competitors, there was hundreds of them all over the place. And we knew that they'd been in business a long time and they were ready for consolidation because the owners were either about to retire or had enough. So we went to the market to get the currency to actually lead a consolidation process.
So is it fair to say that you might not have gone to the AIM market were it not for the fact that your industry was crying out for consolidation? Do you think that's what drove it ultimately?
Yeah, that's what drove it. Yeah.
And you're thinking, I've got Johnson Diversity at the top, Echo Lab, a strong second, and everybody else needs organising.
Yeah.
What was the plan? What was the strategy? Because there you were in Hertfordshire. Mm-hmm. What, turning over £1 million, turning over £2 million?
Well, we doubled
growing,
every year. And
then you get to 8, 9, 10 million quid.
Yeah.
And you've still got that one site by then, this time probably at Welham Green.
Yep.
How do you then look and think about UK coverage?
We did it through acquisition mainly. We acquired, I think it was Keene up in Manchester.
Keene Janitorial.
Keene Janitorial was in
up
Manchester.
At Cheadle Hume Way, wasn't it? Hazel Grove.
Old Trafford. No, it was Old Trafford.
Yeah, that was, okay. Yeah, so you've done a small acquisition?
Done a small acquisition. Then we did, I can't remember if we did Renaissance, Jenny and...
I know you went to the market to raise funds,
they
said, what do you want to do with the funds? Because they don't want it just sat in the bank.
No.
And that was targeted with Quantum.
Quantum was one. S&B Chemicals over in Ireland.
Yeah.
The factory.
Yeah, that was early, wasn't it?
Yeah. We did GWP.
Yeah.
We did E-Hygiene.
Who?
E-Hygiene.
Right. Baker Hygiene?
Baker Hygiene. Christ, I forgot that one. Yeah, Baker Hygiene.
What about Jenny? Jenny and her daughter?
Renaissance.
That was down in Worcester Way?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was mainly, their skill sets was laundries and care homes.
So that was a strategic, to go into a whole new area.
Yeah.
Right.
As well, yeah. Yeah, so that was that. And we grew it. We think it was successful. Had its ups and downs on the way through, like most businesses did. And we ended up being the number one in the UK in terms of turnover. We actually surpassed Diversity. So at the time of Bain Capital buying us, when they put the two businesses together, we were the larger ones of the two. Because
before Bain made you an offer, you'd had one or two other expressions of interest.
Yeah, we had other extensions, and there was a time also.
A couple of VCs.
Yeah, a couple of VCs and that, and yeah. So,
what was it about Bain when they came to you that you thought the time is right, this is a good fit?
They had the same ambitions as I did, just consolidate the market.
Right, and by this point you'd already become the number one.
Yeah, but then we're looking abroad now and we're looking globally now.
Oh, right.
Which, yeah.
So what sort of other markets were they looking to get into?
They weren't... Because Diversity had that international reach anyhow, it was just building on what they had. So it's France, it was Germany, it was, Africa, it was America, it was all of those places.
Right, so once you get to a certain size, then international markets is quite logical, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
So looking back,
number one, no regrets. Could have done things better.
Because you've had probably, what do you reckon, half a century doing it yourself?
50 years.
Getting on for? Not quite.
Probably a bit less, yeah.
Call it 40 between friends.
40, yeah.
But 40 years, so it's like to become an overnight success in 40 years.
Would you say 40 years is overnight?
No,
it's steady. Look, at the end of the day, I've had a good living out of it, yeah. Made lots and lots of good friends. A lot of customers have become friends as well. Yeah. and we've and along the way we've had a lot of fun. I think that's the message.
And looking back again, that qualification, that young ACCA trainee.
Yeah.
If you look back now, what would you tell that 20-year-old?
What would I tell the 20-year-old
me? Tell yourself, looking back.
What would I tell myself?
Anything? Or do you think you could have been bolder? Do you think you could have been less risky?
Yeah, I think I could have been bolder if I come back, and it may sound strange, been bolder with my relationships with people. Right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's people that make a business. Both, both employees and customers as well. Right? And when I say bolder, maybe even though I say so myself, I became one of the best networkers that there is.
I think that's
and
clear.
If I had done that earlier, I may have got to where I wanted to go
a little bit
quicker.
So you would have a bit more confidence in developing your network.
Yeah. Networking's underestimated.
So every hour networking is probably worth just as much of a boardroom meeting.
Absolutely. Networking is definitely underestimated.
And what have you found to be the most effective ways of developing your network? I know that you've invested in quite a few charities, and you come across a lot of people, from royalty to footballers to heads of restaurant groups. But
it's as broad as it is, wide. Yeah.
The golf course has played a part in that.
The golf course certainly has, and probably one of my regrets is that I didn't start playing golf in my 20s, and I waited until my 40s to start playing golf, because it's been significantly important, both in my social business life as well. Yeah, and that could be one of the reasons why I'm saying, in terms of networking, be a bit bolder with it.
So the team that you develop over all these years. You'd see your customers as part of that team. You see your suppliers as part of that team.
Absolutely right.
You don't restrict your team to those people inside the team.
Absolutely right. Yeah. You try to get rid of people who will add nothing to it. Yeah, or keep them in a certain place.
So you just keep looking.
Yeah.
Keep networking.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
Absolutely.
Anything about any risks or any dangers of growing too fast? A number of our clients find the step between startup and then rapid growth to be quite challenging.
It is challenging, and I guess probably that's where
a lot
my
fall down.
Remember I said to you, as far as me, I can take a pound and work it right the way through the P&L. Yeah. And even the cash it will throw off at the moment.
And be aware
that
every pound you sell, if you don't sell it,
how it affects
the balance sheet, the profit and loss, and the cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So, in summary, being an ACCA helped, and being a networker helped a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks ever so much for spending the time.
No,
I hope people who've watched this will see one or two of the words of wisdom come out. I've learned an awful lot from my 4 years I spent with you. And I really appreciate you finding the time to come down to the Cubed.
Richard, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope
the next one will be on the golf course.
Yeah.
That's a promise.
Okay.
Thanks ever so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.